You are now listening to the fastest show on iSports Radio. My name is Daryl Kinsey Jr. Welcoming you to our lap of Extra Mile for today, January 11th, 2024. And it is the very first lap of the 2024 International Racing season. It has been a long winter of discontent, but it is now over. And the sound of racing engines is right on the horizon. And to help me talk about all of this, of course, is my co-host, Christopher Lehman. Chris?
How are you doing this evening, Daryl?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be back. The chat is starting to fill up. Taryn Rodriguez in the chat right now. Good evening, gents. Let's raise the green flag. Absolutely. It is high and flying as we get started with this edition of the Extra Mile. If you're listening live, get in on the chat. We will read the comments as the show progresses. So we are back. Chris, we missed you. And you had to get called back to the fields out there in upstate New York. But it's glad that you are back here with us. And we're ready to go racing again.
Yeah, it was a successful harvest. We got it all done in record time. So that's good. But it also means a lot of time away from home. And what time you do have home, there's other priorities. So glad to be back. Looking forward to this upcoming season.
Yeah, I'm glad for you. I'm glad you to be here. And Jen B in the chat saying, have a great show. Thank you so much, Jen. And thank you for listening tonight. It's been a winter of change for a lot of us, especially those here included. Usually around this time, you would hear the voice of Michael Ward, but we have some good news and some bad news with Michael. We'll start with the bad news first. He will probably not be on the front end side of things with the Extra Mile going forward because this is good news for him. He got a new job, which is great to hear with Michael, and we're so happy for that. Unfortunately, with his new working hours, he will not be on for Showtime, but he will still be working in the back end, doing things, helping us behind the scenes. So he is still with us and a part of the show, even if he is not here talking with us about the trials and tribulations of Ferrari on a Thursday evening. But Chris, I'm happy for him. He's one of the two of us actually got new jobs over the winter. I started a new job in December, actually shortly after we went off the air for our season break. So sad not to have Michael on the show, but it's good to see him gainfully employed.
Yeah, I'm never gonna fault somebody for what they got to do to pay the bills, and congratulations to Michael on the new gig, and wishing you all the luck. It sucks you're not here, but yeah, I'm wishing you nothing but the best, and I'm looking forward to continue working with you behind the scenes. Unfortunately, listeners won't get to hear you, but you're certainly not. You're certainly still a part of the show, and you always got a place on a day off or whatever, and we'll try not to harp on Ferrari too bad. One of us will have to play devil's advocate for you.
We'll try, but it depends on what
Ferrari
decides to do. Larry B., our esteemed leader, says, congratulations, Michael. And yes, congratulations, Mike. And he says, welcome back, gentlemen, as well. Thank you, sir. We are so happy to be back. And as I said, I also got the new job as well. My career in the newspaper business has come to an end. I'm now working on the government PR side of things, as far as I'll go with that. But it's nice, a lot steadier hours. We don't have to worry as much about having to preempt or change directions with the show because I get pulled away to a meeting that I have to cover. So things are feeling great. And I can segue that into our little first segment as we get ready for the racing season on what is a earlier edition of our preseason show, which I'll talk about reason why in a minute, is we got a lot of new faces going to new places. And the biggest place seems to be the NHRA, Chris, where we have Tony Stewart, who was an owner. He is now a driver. as Leah Pruitt has decided to step out of her top fuel car, and now it's going to be Tony Stewart that's going to be going down the straight line this season.
Yeah, it's actually been a pretty big offseason change for Tony Stewart. I mean, half of his NASCAR team has changed over too this year, rebranding, and so Tony Stewart's had a really busy offseason. And I know that as far as the ownership thing, he takes Stewart Haas very seriously. But it's good to see him. Um, Tony, whatever you want to say about him, anything's probably about valid when it comes to him. But he's a
Mm-hmm.
competitor at the end of the day. And so the fact that he's going to be, going down the drag strip is, I would say it's not awfully surprising, and I think that he is going to be loving every single moment of it.
Yes, Leah
Especially
decided.
with
Go ahead.
SRX too. The news about SRX.
Yeah, we'll get to
So
that in a minute. That was late breaking as I was on my way home today. But
so Tony's had a crazy offseason.
yeah, it's been a real wild off season for him. On the NASCAR side of things, Josh Berry and Noah Gragson will be taking over for Kevin Harvick and Eric Almirola. Those two, I think Josh is going to be the one under the most pressure. I think Noah Gragson, with how bad last season went, I think if he just finishes this upcoming season, he's going to feel like he did something good.
Yeah, Noah's coming in with low expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we're looking for out of Noah is character. It's not even what he does on the track, it's what he does. Well, it is what he does on the track, but we're looking for character growth and development. Um, and, if you think about the types of drivers we've said that about before. Tony Stewart's one of those guys where you just said, he's always been a hothead, and it's always like, he's had opportunities. Let's see what he does. Character growth. Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, other guys that said, hey, there's character concerns, and as they got older and matured, they definitely mellowed out a little bit. So we'll be looking for a similar trajectory out of Noah. Is what mental growth did he make last season and this off season to become a more mature and an overall better racer?
Yeah, and I think the big part of him is going to be the maturity thing. I think that's with this show, that has been our biggest knock on Noah. It's never been about the talent, it's been about the maturity. Unfortunately, it bit him in a big way last year, liking the racially insensitive Instagram post about the George Floyd murder. That is what ended up getting him suspended. He then voluntarily left his ride at Legacy Motor Club to take time for self-reflection, which, to be honest, was probably the best for both teams, Chris, because even as I think back to that time, nothing was going particularly well for that partnership.
No, and I mean, I don't want it to come off the wrong way, but that was a very easy out for Noah, right?
Yeah.
He did that, and I don't think he had a second thought about leaving the program. It wasn't a convenient, easy out, but I think it was a no-brainer for him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not trying to minimize the situation, but um, it just speaks to the season that he and Legacy as a whole had. And it was a season to forget, to put it as lightly as possible.
Yeah, it's a season he is not going to ever want to think about professionally or personally. But as we look at how things are going with that team, switching it back to the NHRA side for a little bit, I was really excited to see the Tony Stewart versus Leah Pruitt, or I guess Leah Stewart now, whatever you want to say, the husband versus wife showdown on the drag strip. Unfortunately, we're not going to get that. Leah's going to do the exhibition race coming up next month and going to call it a career, as her and Tony appear to be planning to start a family, which, given that announcement is happening now, I think that she already knows that family is starting, I'll say there. So I'll give a preemptive congratulations to Tony and Leah. Tony becoming a first-time father at 52 years old. You're never too old to get that first one.
Apparently, my goodness.
Yeah.
Um, Theo Von's dad was like in his 70s,
Hmm.
um, so it's not out of the question, but if that's certainly the case, then congratulations, Tony. And I have a feeling it won't be long now before we know what's going on. I'm sure probably about by the time Daytona comes around, we'll have a decent idea if she's at the track or not.
Yeah. Larry B says, but did Tony mellow out? Sure. Sure he
I
did.
would I would say he stepped out of the high pressure situations
Yeah.
publicly, that is.
Yeah. One of the situations he's stepping out of once again is race series ownership because, and this was a weird one. We'll start with the Ray Evernham part of this and then come back to the Tony Stewart part. So earlier this week, it was announced that Ray Evernham had bought the rights to restart our IROC, the International Race of Champions. Are planning a race with classic IROC cars, and they're actually the future plans include a revival of the series, which once brought together drivers from multiple different disciplines to see who could win a race in equal machinery. Unfortunately, due to sponsorship concerns, just the fact that IROC doesn't run that much, so the return on investment wasn't that great. It unfortunately fell apart. Its last inference as a series was the Crown Royal IROC series in the mid 2000s. And a lot of people wondered, what did that mean for SRX? Well, literally just a few hours ago, it was announced that SRX will not return for season 4. They say postponed, but Chris, let's be honest, it's over.
Yeah, and it sucks because SRX was highly entertaining. I thought that they were really gaining every year. Um, the stands were always packed. There was never an empty seat in those places. But I think what they really, and this isn't, we don't need to go into a full-blown criticism of it,
Mm-hmm.
but that first season they really touted the local boy versus the big stars, and I feel like
Yes.
they lost that in seasons 2 and 3. You know, um, it changed, and I'm not saying that's why it's not continuing because who really knows? But it really sucks that I feel like they were really getting a lot of traction. They were having, um, people from all over the world coming in and competing, and it was an exciting thing. And they were having all these NASCAR stars and all that, and they had the cooperation of NASCAR, which is something we didn't think that would ever happen.
Mm-hmm.
But NASCAR definitely behind the scenes was helping them out. Like, there's no way that they were getting all of these. Chase Elliott's, Ryan Blaney's, Kyle Busch's, Kevin Harvick's. They weren't getting these guys without NASCAR's say so. Um, and so that it was at least behind the scenes collaborative. But I think it's a really big blow for North American racing. But and I say that because it drew international crowds in, um, and kind of gave you a nice little snippet, but also there were some things that SRX did with the broadcast that was, in my opinion, far and superior, and that was just their display on screen. Like,
Yeah, the display on screen was good. The fact that they would actually talk to drivers during the race, which you would not get away with that during a regular season NASCAR broadcast. So they did a lot with the broadcast side. That was a lot of fun. We also got to see uh, also got to see Paul Tracy kind of run himself out of SRX with his constant shenanigans.
yeah, he was not missed, and that's putting it lightly.
Yeah, it was not
But that
great.
was the only place where you're seeing, um, you know, uh, like just drivers of all sorts of different disciplines in the same place. You don't really see that. I mean, sure, you go to something like the the endurance races, the 24 hours. You got Le Mans, you got Daytona. Um, you get a mix of people in those, and those are fun to watch, right? Especially those multi-discipline teams that put together a couple different drivers. But SRX is really like an easy to digest, getting exposure to many different disciplines of racing. And they're all in the same place, the same equipment. They have 2 practices to make some very minor adjustments. No fresh tires, yada yada yada. It was just the definition of show up to the track and see what you can do with it. And I thought that it put on a great show, and it's a damn shame that we're losing it for whatever reason that we actually are, not the press release that we got.
Yeah. It sucks that we're not going to have it anymore, but the memories will live on. Larry B says in the chat, that sucks. It really does. So it is unfortunate that we do not have SRX anymore. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll stick with the Stuart Haas theme because another individual that worked for a Haas team is going to be looking for a new job this year. We'll talk about that on the other side of this break here on the Extra Mile on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, sports fans? You're listening to IE Sports Radio, your direct. I'm your favorite West Coast Wisconsinite, Bernie Bango, and if you're a cheesehead, come listen to my show, Big Cheese Sports, where we road trip around America's Dairyland, previewing, reviewing, predicting, debating, and digging into all that is Wisconsin sports at the college and pro levels. Join me on IE Sports Radio, Sundays at 1 p.m. Central Standard. Bernie out.
Well, what is up, Carolina Nation? This is John Felipe of the Carolina Cast, of course, the podcast of, by, and for the Carolinas, right here on IE Sports, your direct feed for all that is sports. And I'm reminding you to tune in Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern for the latest in Carolina sports, whether it's the Panthers that keep on pounding, the fly natures of the Hornets, the storming Hurricanes, the battle of the Blues with Duke and UNC, the fight of the Clemson Tigers, or the amazing atmosphere of any Carolina college. I'm talking App State, I'm talking ECU. I've got you covered. Once again, tune in for the Carolina Cast with me, John Felipe, Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And we're back here on the Extra Mile on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Daryl and Chris here with you on this inaugural episode of the Extra Mile. And then before the break, I mentioned that someone in the Haas organization is also going to be looking for a new job. That individual is going to be Gunther Steiner. That was announced this weekend that he is that he is no longer the head of Haas F1. And Chris, this one kind of came out of left field, and with some interesting comments that Gene Haas has made since. It sounds like there may have been a disagreement over the direction of the team.
It very well could be, and as you alluded to, it does sound like it's financial to most likely anyway. And that sucks because I think he was loved by everybody on the grid. I don't think there was a single person on the grid that did not like him. And I think Netflix is like, oh shit, because everybody that likes Drives to Survive, like, you know what I mean? Like everybody loves what Gunter has to say.
Yes.
He is truly a bright spot in Drive to Survive, and he is one of the reasons that it is so watchable is because you're just like every time you see him come on screen, you're like, oh boy, what's about to happen? He's gonna. I don't know. I love Gunter, and Drive to Survive really made him a household brand almost. And it's going to be interesting because, it's at least for me, but I think for a lot of other people as well, he is Haas F1.
Yes.
Right? He is the face of that organization. And so I think that they're going to have an identity issue. You look at every other team and, and actually team principals to a degree are just as famous and influential as the top drivers. I mean, look at, I would say the big three used to be Christian, Toto, and Gunter, just in terms of, the fact that Drive to Survive really made Gunter just an icon on the grid. But yeah, I mean, sometimes these team principals are just as much of a superstar, just as famous, just as renowned as the drivers. And so I really hope that Gunter finds a place to land. I don't know that he's going to have, that team principal like position. I really hope that he finds one. But at the same time, I just hope that whatever he ends up doing, he's happy. But he is surely going to be missed.
Yeah, and it just starts, it's a continued head scratcher for Haas F1, which started out with such high hopes and has really, we thought would go quickly become one of the top teams. Instead, has dropped all the way back to the rear of the grid. Some conversations about their car development, about their level of investment in that development, and they're going to have to try to figure out a way to prove, even with this MoneyGram infusion that they have right now, that they can make this work. And it's going to fall to Ayo Komatsu, who is going to be the new team principal. And it's really going to be on to Haas that they start moving up the grid, because let's be honest, whether Formula One wants it or not, there is another American team coming to that grid in 2026. And they could very easily get overtaken if they cannot get that car back to where it was.
Yeah, I think that the good thing is that right now for the team going forward, just with that fallback, you don't have a ton of expectations going forward. I would say that if the team can finish ninth, even eighth, I think they're going to consider that a win, just with that whirlwind of a season they've had. And, I don't know. it's just a head scratcher. Um, and I feel like it's one of those things that from the outside looking in, you can see the I don't even know the best word to use here, but it's it's like watching a car wreck,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can see it happening, but the people in the vehicle don't. Um, and that's how I feel Haas is. I mean, from the when you're inside, you don't even see what a train wreck it is, and but from us outside, just with um, driver changes and not giving, like they made the decision to go with the younger guys, and that didn't work, and now we just decided we're going to get all the old guys in, and that's not working, and you need a balanced approach, and they, you know, change sponsors, and it's just like sometimes just what you need is a little continuity. And
Yeah.
that seems to be like something Haas is incapable of providing.
Well, they just need a year where they're out of the headlines for a negative story. I don't know if they can get there, but they just got to go through this year once we get started with the only bad news coming because of on-track performance. Because between taking the wrong money the first time with Rich Energy, taking the wrong money a second time with the Eurocali organization, which really bit them 2 years ago when the war in Ukraine started. They seem to have the money from a reputable company. Then Gene was doing some shady stuff. It's just, you got to stay out of the... Potentially. It's not proven yet, but at this point, who knows? The point is, Gene's got to stay away from the negative headlines because it's starting to get as bad for him as it is for Boeing right now and the 737 MAX. If you saw what happened with the door last week,
and another one today.
Yeah, and the rumor
it
with
didn't
that
fly
is
off, but something happened.
Yeah, they're looking at they might lose their license to build planes at this point because now the FAA is investigating them. And Gene and Haas F1, they've got to keep their head down and just focus on building a good car and staying out of the nonsense, which in Formula One, as we know, is insanely difficult.
Yeah, and the reason you wonder is because if they're going to make a team principal change, and it was kind of like a performance based thing, I should say, he would have been canned a couple months ago.
Yeah, why would you wait until now if you were going to fire him?
We're a month away from preseason testing, if that.
Yep. Cars are going to start getting revealed next month.
Yeah. Yeah. Your 2024 car is already built right now.
Yeah.
You're working on your first set of upgrades at this point. So the fact that he's canned today means that this is a reaction to something that happened. This isn't a difference of we don't like the direction that he took this car, because that would have already happened months ago. This is he did something either completely heinous, like, I don't think he's like a, like a
I know what you mean.
Like an inappropriate person at work is, I think, what I'm going, like sexual harassment type of way. Like, I don't see him going there. I don't see that being the reason, like an HR kind of thing. This seems like Gene had to do it because Gene wasn't happy with what Gunter was saying to him.
Yeah, they were getting into some conversations and they were not seeing eye to eye. And it ended up with, unfortunately, Gunther lost that battle because Gene owns the team.
Yep.
It's definitely how we got here.
Yeah, it's just a shame.
Yeah. Speaking of changes with Formula One, we have more rule changes. And now we're down to 3 engines for the full season.
Why not?
Starting this year, because that makes sense. Let's add a bunch of races and then take away an engine. That makes perfect sense with the FIA. Here's my question. How early in the season does Ferrari take their grid penalty? Because we know it's coming.
It was what, race 5 last year? 6?
Yeah, because Leclerc ended up tearing up his entire allotment in like the first 3 races.
Yeah, I would say you probably start seeing them by race 5. Oh, well, no, probably.
They
I'd
only
say
got 3 this time.
I'd say halfway through the season, everybody's taken, like, I'd say at least every team has one driver that's taken some sort of grid penalty by the halfway point.
Yeah, at this point, somebody's taking a grid penalty.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they're doing this intentionally to induce more grid penalties to make the racing more different or more unpredictable, but just make better regulations. Like, don't play with the rules like this.
Yeah, there are ways to manufacture drama without manufacturing drama.
Yeah, but we know they like manufacturing drama, high 2021. But we'll see how it goes in Formula One with those engines, as they're going to start revealing cars in February. At the end of the month, we go testing, and in March, the Bahrain Grand Prix, we're racing, and the question is, does Mercedes have anything for Red Bull, and can Ferrari stay out of their own way?
And can George and Lewis play nice?
That's going to be the one we're going to be watching all year, because particularly early in the season, if they start having trouble getting along, it's going to be a long year for Mercedes, especially in a year where I really think Toto's job is at risk if they are not in the championship battle. Because if you're the Mercedes brass, and it's been, 3 years now since 2021, and you are nowhere near avenging what happened there, you've got to make a change.
Yeah, and here's the thing. We're coming into the 3rd season since 2021. It sucks, but you have to move on, and it's no longer an excuse.
Yeah.
2022, 100% valid, right? You were deflated. You got robbed. Absolutely. That sucks.
Yeah, you're
2023,
deflated.
You're like, last time you get to use this. 2024, it's no longer 0% acceptable to use 2021 as anything.
Yeah, like 2022, you're like, okay, we tried to come back and fight it. The car sucks. We screwed up after what happened there with 2021. That's a rough season. 2023 for me was kind of, okay, you should have been better than this. 2024, I want to see heads roll if they can't get it right.
Correct.
And go ahead.
100%. I'm 100% with you. It's if things aren't looking right by the halfway point in this season, you start making contingencies.
Yeah. And in 2024, one of the main questions is McLaren's speed. Was that a mirage at the end of the year, or are they now well and truly in this fight with the top teams again? Because they went from struggling to actually being a performing team at the end of the year.
That's one of those things you could also say. Obviously, a driver is only about as good as the car can potentially be. But it could also just be, part of it is you get a little bit of a performance boost. But, how were these drivers progressing throughout the year? They're learning the car. They're making adjustments, right? They're figuring out, Piastri, at least Lando's been there long enough. They know how to set a car up for him. But with Piastri getting a little faster, does that push Lando a little bit? And does that, does Piastri pushing Lando push them higher up the grid? Yes, it does.
Yeah.
So it's as Piastri develops, Lando should get quicker, and McLaren as a whole should be getting quicker.
Yeah, that whole team should be starting to get quicker, and that should propel them up the order. But I think it's got to be a show me year for Lando this year.
It does.
We keep talking about the potential of him winning races and being in contention for championships. And look, McLaren hasn't been that great, but at the same time, they're starting to get better. It's time to crap it off the pot for Lando. He's got to show me something this year. I hesitate to say he needs to win a race because we need to see what the pecking order is. But if that car is anywhere near the front, he's got to win a race this year to prove that the further investment is worth it.
Yeah, and another thing you can bring back to Lando is like how much does he look back on him using Red Bull as a bargaining chip? That was something that he's going to look back on and probably consider the biggest regret in his career. So Lando, I think Lando done effed up personally. And I think everybody thinks that probably too. But Lando's definitely in a make or break year. I would say not even just in his team, but probably also public opinion. I think every year, I think for probably the last 2 years, Lando's been in a make or break situation for the public opinion at least. And from the sounds of it, I think you and I have jumped on this year's Lando's make or break. And it's probably just going to be perpetually, if he doesn't do it this year, another portion of the public opinion, another whole slew of fans are going to be, this is Lando's make or break year. And I really think that he's running out of time, especially with the public opinion.
I mean, it's year 6. So
yeah, and you don't have a win. I can count your podiums on my hand. Which I think that's if Lando doesn't win races, we need to see a handful of podiums out of him.
He had
if he
7.
Can do that, he's at least swaying it back a little bit.
Well, he had 7 last year, but I think
did he really?
Yeah, he had 7, and most of those came near the end of the year when they hit that speed boost out of nowhere.
Oh, okay,
but he had the 2 seconds back-to-back, Great Britain and Hungary. And then there was that stretch from Singapore to the U.S. where that team was just completely on it as far as their speed and pace. And that, of course, ended at Las Vegas, and he finished 5th at Abu Dhabi. Because it was really with that team from Austria on that they found something with their car, and it just clicked for everybody. But he's got to do better. And I like Lando, but there comes a time where you stop talking about this guy's a future world champion to trying to figure out, man, is this guy actually going to win a race? That's where we are.
Yeah. The problem is right now is I'm not entirely confident that anybody in the next couple of years, I think there's one world champion booked in for the next 2 years minimum. And so for somebody like Lando, you need to really be winning some races, but yeah, like you said, we'll have to see what the pecking order looks like next year. Everybody's had the off season, everybody started developing, so we'll see how things look at preseason testing.
It'll be fun. We do also have IndyCar coming up next year, and the question is Scott Dixon going to get the 7th championship, and also Kyle Larson doing the double with the Indy 500 and the Coke 600? I really think the bigger story is Dixon trying to get that 7th.
Yeah.
Just from a regular season standpoint, obviously Larson doing the double in the Indy 500. When we get to the month of May, that's going to dominate things. But Scott Dixon is trying to set himself as a cut above in not Formula One, in IndyCar. Someone that is stuck with the sport for years and has been rewarded with race wins and championships. He gets that 7th. That's going to put him above everyone else, I think, in the GOAT debate in IndyCar.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like for probably a lot of people, he is their GOAT. And this becomes, if he can pull it off, this becomes what puts him in the books as the GOAT.
Mm-hmm.
But, and of course, like you alluded to, the month of May, there's only going to be one name in all of motorsports media, and that's Kyle Larson. Which it's exciting to see somebody do the double. I don't think the triple is possible, but it would be interesting if somebody could pull off the big 3 on Memorial Day weekend. But
unfortunately, the time difference doesn't fit.
Yeah, it works out the opposite, or not the opposite, but it just won't work.
Yeah,
but it'd be fun.
It's fun to think about, but it just the logistics.
Yeah, it'd never work.
Yeah.
But
I would love to see it.
and the other thing we're looking forward to is SVG making his full season debut over here. Mm-hmm. I'm personally really looking forward to that, and he's going to be running. He's going to be getting a lot of different experience across the 3 series, so it's going to be exciting to watch him, and I'm sure a lot of Australia and New Zealand and just kind of that whole kind of corner of the world are going to be tuning in a little bit more than they usually would, so that's pretty exciting too, and I hope that we win over some fans down there.
Yeah, how do we think he's going to do in Xfinity this year? Because he'll be running a lot more ovals this year. He'll be running a couple of road courses as well in Cup, and I think he's going to run Talladega in Cup as well. I think we know what the road course is. He's going to be nearly a lock for a win, but how do we think that oval acclimation is going to go? Because for anybody trying to come from one of the primary road course series into NASCAR, it's the ovals that trip them up.
Yeah, I would say that he's going to certainly be an odds-on favorite for road courses. I don't probably see him winning again. I don't want to say that his first win was a fluke, because it is far from it. I would just say that the uncontrollable circumstances certainly favored him. Yes. The fact that it was raining on a road course, on a street course, not a road course, big difference. I would say that there were a lot of factors that assisted him in his win. But it does not take away from the just awe-inspiringness of it. But I probably don't see him doing as well as I would hope. But it doesn't make me any less excited about him being here.
Yeah, I'm glad that he's going to be here. It is going to take some time for him to develop, but it will be fun to see him get acclimated to NASCAR and eventually probably end up in the Cup Series eventually.
Yeah, I would say he's probably got, I'd say probably 2 years. Mm-hmm. Depending on how he progresses this year, of course.
And of course, it wouldn't be this show without talking the NASCAR season. And we are in for the first title defense for Ryan Blaney. They did make some changes to the short track and road course package. They took off a lot of the aerodynamic aids and they lowered the splitter down to about 3 inches to try and get these cars less planted at the road courses and short tracks. We'll see how it works. Hopefully it produces better racing there, so it gives one less thing for people on NASCAR Twitter. I guess Andrew has I guess we can say NASCAR Threads now to complain about. But it's going to be an exciting season, and of course for me, 23-11, Bubba Wallace came off a career year. All he was missing was the win. This year, they've got to clean up. I've said it every year. They have got to clean up the struggles in the early part of the season if they want to be a more competitive team. They did that somewhat last year, then just had an absolutely terrible summer, but were still able to get a top 10 points finish. If they can put together a first 26, Chris, he's going to be in the round of 8 or probably the round of 4.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of potential, not only with just Bubba, but that team. They definitely have progressed a lot since they started out as one car team. I think as time has came on, and they've developed their own systems and databases, and they're developing their own people and engineers. And so they really went from a heavily reliant on Joe Gibbs, and you could tell that they were reliant on Joe Gibbs. And now they are their own team. They are their own identity, and they are their own performance. And what you saw last year was them telling NASCAR, we're here. Mm-hmm. That's what last year was. Last year was that statement, we are here. And that's the statement that Trackhouse made when they bought CGR. They said, we are here. And then they had that just phenomenal season with Ross. And 2311 has the opportunity to replicate what Trackhouse did with Ross next year with either Tyler or Bubba. I definitely can see one or both of them making the playoffs, one or both of them not only necessarily having a race win, but probably multiple. And if I'm a Bubba fan, a 2311 fan, even a Toyota fan in general, I have a lot to look forward to in 2024 based off of those two guys at 2311. Mm-hmm. Way more promise than I'm looking at with Joe Gibbs, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think Joe Gibbs is probably going to struggle. The question also, what are the new cars going to do between the Ford and the Toyota? Both of them have new cars.
But yeah, so there might probably be, there will probably be, actually, now that you mentioned that, there's probably going to be some early season struggle. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't surprise me, to be honest. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah. Chevy is the only one with the new car, with the old car, but the issue is they don't have a lot riding with that Camaro anymore because they have completely shut down Camaro production, and the question is, what are they going to drive after 2025 or drive in 2025? They don't really have a high performance car that makes sense. The Malibu doesn't sell that well for them to justify bringing that in.
It's probably going to be some ridiculous looking Corvette.
The Corvette doesn't fit the template.
They'll make it fit. I don't know.
It's too short. For one, it's not going to be the Corvette. The roof's too short.
Maybe it'll be the Volt or the Bolt or whatever they call it.
That just wouldn't make any sense. I know the prevailing thought is they'll take Chevy out entirely and replace it with Cadillac and run with the CT. I keep calling it the CTS, but the Blackwing. The little high performance sedan they have with Cadillac.
Yeah. That's a hard sell for me.
Really?
I just don't see. I don't see Chevrolet giving up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's a tough one.
I mean, the problem is they don't have a car. Like,
Yeah,
what is going to be the car? That's the issue.
probably the Malibu.
I don't see the Malibu. I don't even know if they're still making the Malibu. That's the other thing.
I don't know.
The CT5V and the CT5 Blackwing kind of fit the motif.
They do.
But trying to see if they're still making the Malibu. But yeah, Chevy doesn't have a lot of cars.
It's
And also
indicative of the whole. Oh, they got the 2024 Malibu.
yeah, but they're
It's
also
a boat.
discontinuing the Malibu.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
It's because all the manufacturers are discontinuing cars.
Well, they originally they were all going electric. That doesn't seem to be happening anymore. And it looks like everybody's starting to go towards hybrid instead of electric. But even still, their current models are going away.
Yeah.
And the Malibu wasn't selling that great. Larry B says, freaking Chevy. Yeah, basically. But the Malibu wasn't selling that great, mainly because it was not very reliable. And the Camaro wasn't selling that great either. That's why the two are gone. People are still buying Cadillacs, though. And
Yeah.
I think if you're GM, if you're not going to make another Chevy,
Maybe
then
you make the decision.
yeah, you're going to make the decision to go to Cadillac.
It'll be freaking weird to not see the bow tie, though.
It is going to be weird.
I would rather it be Cadillac, to be honest with you. It'd definitely be weird, but it'd be an adjustment. But as obviously as a Hendrick fan, it definitely affects my thoughts. But I don't know. That's tough. I'm coming off a year to forget too, in terms of my NASCAR fandom. We're just gonna pretend 2023 never happened.
Yeah. Was not fun.
No, it really sucked.
Which driver were you with again? Sorry, it's been a while.
Bowman.
Oh, right. Oh, God, right.
Yeah.
Bowman had a weirdly down season, and I don't know what that was about.
He never recovered from the injury.
Yeah. And I think I'll see if he comes. I think now that he's had an off season with that injury, he'll be back better than ever. But there was a lot of guys that won in 2022 that just didn't show up in 2023.
Chase.
Chase, Suarez. Well, Chase just had a nightmare season. Started with the injury, then he got suspended for right rearing Denny, and at that point, Chase just didn't seem like he cared.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like almost all of last year, since he had that injury, I was just like, he's checked out.
Yeah.
He just, whenever you saw him, he just seemed like he was just checked out, ready to move on. And to be honest with you, it kind of seemed like he was like done with NASCAR. That's how uninterested he seemed at all times.
Yeah, he seemed a lot happier getting his pilot's license in the off season than running last season, how things went. But when you have championship aspirations and that's pretty much gone, what you gonna do?
Yeah, precisely. I don't know.
So the first episode of The Extra Mile is coming to a close. Now, we will not air next week, which will be the traditional start of the show, because that is January 18th. That is my birthday. So I'm going to take some time to celebrate that. We will be back Rolex 24 Sunday on Thursday, January 25th. And then from there, we are rolling right along into the NASCAR season, the start of IndyCar, NHRA, and all of it. as the 2024 season is back again. So we're going to throw the checkered flag for this edition of the Extra Mile. Remember, if you want to talk to me or Chris during the season, I'm at DK Jr. 12. Chris is at Fiji Sims, and Michael, even though he is on the back foot, you can still find him at Michael_Wart25. If you want to catch up on all of our other IE Sports Radio shows, make sure you log on to www.iesportsradio.com, see all the show bios, get in on the forums, buy some merchandise, some wonderful jerky as well. And make sure that you catch up on every show you may have missed. And if you've missed any episode of any IE Sports Radio show live, you can pick it up, tape delayed, wherever you get your podcast, as well as the YouTube repository, where there's a copy of every episode we've ever done. So thank you so much for listening to this edition of The Extra Mile. We're back for 2024. For Chris, I'm Daryl. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you at the next green flag. Good night, everybody.